wanna hang on to it and just collect red.
Thank you very much for coming in. I'm happy to hear so many people here. It's a little early, so we're hoping maybe other people will trickle in for the rest of the presentation. But I appreciate you setting aside some of your afternoon to share your thoughts with us. We're going to have a very exciting presentation today from Siskovich, our great team that is helping us draft the update for the Downtown Master Plan. So Grace is going to introduce the team and going to explain to you a little bit of how the session is going to run. Grace? Sorry, my name is Ana Maria Ponte. I'm the Assistant Development Services Director.
Thank you, Anna. Good evening, everyone. My name is Grace Perdomo, and I'm with Siskovich Architects. And I'm going to walk you through, for the next 5 minutes, brief introduction about our process. Can I see first, by a show of hands, who has participated in our previous 2 panel sessions? Okay, great. Well, welcome, and the rest that are new to joining us today. We're very excited to have you here, particularly at this point in the process, and are very much looking forward to your input this evening. So again, welcome. I want to introduce you to our Siskovich team and our team of sub-consultants. I currently have with me this evening Bernard Siskovich, founder of our firm, if I can see a raise of hands. Thank you, Bernard. Surya Jafar, our director of design. Daris Avila, our project manager for this project, Stellar. And our rest of our team, I have Amanda Martel, junior designer, Andrew Zegans, and also Jade Cirrus, and I'll introduce the rest. So part of our consulting team includes Lambert Advisory, which many of you met. As you may know, Siskovich worked on the Downtown Master Plan back in 2007, 2009. The current zoning code that is in place was part of the draft of recommendations that were made at the time by the Siskovich team. And Lambert Advisory was our consultant then and also is our consultant now and covered market trends and conditions assessment. We also have, as part of our sub-consulting team, Scape Landscape Architecture. They're a national global landscape architecture firm, and they're covering the public realm and design components of the Downtown Master Plan update. I have Jerome Barth this evening with me, and I'm sorry, Pekswan in the back is part of the Skype team. Jerome Barth is with Town Square. He will be covering public realm programming, activation, and governance, and you will be hearing from Jerome later on in the presentation. Responsible for a lot of work nationally, having to do again with public space, public programming, and activation. Stantec, national transportation firm, Frank Domingo, who's not with us here today. They have been working on the mobility planning, transportation, technology, traffic, and parking components of the plan. Pinder Troutman Consulting, who's a local traffic data and analysis firm. I have Andrea here this evening. Hey, Andrea. And also S.A. Nelson, who has greeted us with great snacks in the front door. Sophia Nelson and her team, who many of you may know, has been covering public and stakeholder outreach and engagement and supporting and assisting the team. So the focus for today is exactly what it says here on the screen. We want to hear from you this evening what you think downtown should look and feel like over the next 10 to 20 years. And that is the focus of this Downtown Master Plan update. Our process involves 3 steps. We are in the first phase of our process, which has included assessments by our team, depending on their areas of expertise, visioning, and goal setting, which is what we're doing here today. As I mentioned earlier, this is the 3rd of 3 visioning panel sessions that we have held with the public as part of our outreach. Over the next few months, we will be developing planning concepts and strategies and come up with recommendations that also involve looking at the downtown master planning area, as I mentioned, but also looking at potential zoning recommendations. And then in the month of November, December, we will go through presentations to elected officials and key stakeholder groups for adoption of our plan recommendations. The public engagement has included various activities, walking through the downtown area, one-on-one meetings and conversations with the mayor and city commissioners. There is a Downtown Master Plan Update Steering Committee that includes representatives, local stakeholders of the downtown area. and then these visioning sessions that we have conducting over the past few months. We've held so far two. This distinguished panel was part of our Visioning Panel 1, where we covered visioning and economics. We held two sessions that day. In the morning, we covered economic development. In the afternoon, the focus was on community development, and several names here are members of your community and easily recognizable. We had Gopal Rajawada join us, Kelly Smallridge, Jennifer Harold, Chris Rook, CRA Director, Jason Larson, and Dr. Alicia Wynn, who's been working with the Northwest neighborhood. We conducted real-time surveys, which we will not have this evening because we have other fun things planned for you. But during that survey, just really going fast through the highlights, the public identified that one of their primary focus for downtown development, the highest priority, was to look at increasing housing affordability, creating vibrant public spaces, and improving the pedestrian and bike connectivity throughout the downtown. Preferred uses, entertainment, they wanted to see a focus on greater access to parks and recreation, and of course the topic of housing affordability came up various times. Key ways to manage your highlights were to focus on quality of life for residents, and the audience was split mostly between residents that attended and development were the highest attendees, focused on both of those aspects, and the primary interest in downtown had to do mostly with folks that live here, work here, and also shop here. During panel session number 2, we covered transportation and mobility and had these distinguished speakers join us during that time, including Jonathan Hopkins, who many of you may know, who's involved with WPB Mobility for downtown, as well as Jessica Keller, your transportation and mobility manager within the city of West Palm Beach. And again, highlights were about improving public access to transportation options. The issue of traffic congestion kept coming up as number 2. Again, had broad representation of attendees during that session, and we can share this information, will be available to all of you online on the city's website. And again, the topic of more pedestrian-only areas and expansion of bike lanes were top of mind and prioritized as such during these online real-time surveys. Okay, so we covered economics during panel session number 1. We addressed mobility during panel session number 2. Today we're going to focus on a very important topic which covers placemaking, everything from character and scale, and how that impacts quality of life in downtown. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bernard Siskovich. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Grace. Welcome. It's fun for me to be here again. It's Yogi Berra said it's deja vu all over again. 2007, I remember spending many nights in West Palm trying to get to the bottom of what the zoning code has been. And the good news for us, I'm very proud to say, with all the stakeholder meetings that we've had, that most people feel this zoning code has been successful. And if we look around and we see all the interest from the world in the city and the buildings that have resulted, I'm really happy to say that the buildings have quality, they have diversity, the streetscape is exciting, there's activities day and night, and that is exactly what we were dreaming about in '07. When we look at it, we can't help but say to ourselves, well, where have we been? Because, you know, it's pretty basic to say, in order to know where I'm going, I need to know where I've been. And downtown West Palm has really, really changed. So we're here basically to be excited about doing version 2 of our code. Our end result is to work on land use and zoning, but we're very much aligned with the idea that in order to create regulation, we need to know what it is we're aiming for. So here's a little vision of the past. This is what it looked like when we were here last. Here we are today, where this is now being called Wall Street South. The world is focused on your city. It's really quite an amazing thing. So to give you a little bit of a boring zoning talk, when we first came, the zoning and the approach to building the city was based on what most people call form-based code, which is basically the building is built on the property line, it goes up a certain number of stories, it steps back, and then it continues up. And we were beginning to see the beginning of those kinds of buildings in West Palm, where you have big U-shaped apartment buildings and units look in at each other across a narrow courtyard. And we came up with this idea that we want to actually create the zoning based on character and based on context, and making sure that we build in design diversity, because as architects, one thing we don't like to be told is what we have to do. We like to be creative, so we wanted to have a zoning code that allowed for that. So I'm going to explain this just very briefly so you understand the underpinning to everything we've done. If you imagine a form-based code, it tells you exactly what it is and where to put it. What we created was an envelope. If you can see it on the screen, we have little invisible boxes. Our approach is, if we define how much you can build and the maximum height that you can go and a whole bunch of other things, the one thing that we cannot allow you to do is to fill the box. So you have ultimate freedom. You can create curving buildings, rectangular buildings, L-shaped buildings. You could build to the maximum height. You could build to the maximum width, but you cannot fill the box. And what you're looking at in your city is the result of that. When you walk down the street, the buildings are not all lining up. They're not all the same height. They have different approaches to facades. They have all kinds of different richness to them, and what we want to do is make sure we maintain that. Now, that's just the design piece, but what has really happened is the population growth is substantial, as you can see. And one of the things that we did back then is we put in incentives. Believe it or not, there had been no new office buildings built in any recent time back in '07, so we now have 2 million square feet more of office. We have 392 rooms back then. We have 1,700 hotel rooms. If you try to rent a room like we do when we want to stay overnight, it's unbelievable how much the average daily rate is for a hotel room in downtown West Palm Beach. Kind of unbelievable. Equal to the resorts of the world. In terms of retail, not a lot of growth, but in terms of residential units and inhabitants, a lot of growth. So there's been a lot of success, but success brings challenges. The challenges are the ones you see on the screen and probably some others. We've heard a lot about congestion, ironically, mostly from people that don't live in the core of the city. Because in our meetings with people in the core, they always are talking about how walkable it is, how they like to be on their bike, how they like the circuit. Nobody complains when you're living here. The people that are trying to get here have issues, and that's very important because that's the workforce, that's the visitors, that's the future. Housing affordability, development pressure, of course, is an issue. Access to transit. That's something we really need to discuss, and we'll be talking about it a little more. And we still have communities in the city that are still very disconnected, and we're going to want to connect them up. So in terms of the framework, our task right now is, what is the vision? So tonight, what we're going to do is break into 4 groups. We're going to show you the 4 quadrants You're going to have a chance to sit at a table with some of our staff. And basically what we want you to think about is we're going to present some ideas, and we're going to be very interested in your feedback regarding some of those ideas. They're not in any way things that we're going to be doing. They're generating ideas for the purpose of discussion, because we think we need to lay out some thoughts in order for us to have a response. So what makes a great city? Well, every day. It's a beautiful day outside today, like it normally is. And when we live in the city every day and we enjoy it, that's one of the things that makes for a great city. But we also know that public space is really how we experience the city. The streets and the roadways and our open spaces are our living room for the city. And in that regard, West Palm is very much like a European city. It's walkable, the sidewalks are comfortable. We can invite our friends to our house. If it's not too big, we can meet at a restaurant. We don't have to spend forever trying to figure out where we're going to park and how we're going to manage it, because if you live here, it's really pretty easy. West Palm Beach is growing, but not all the neighborhoods have shared in it. So we have regional challenges. One of the things we've been talking a lot about is, at least from what I can see right now, West Palm Beach is not only the target for a lot of very influential people, startup companies, amazing businesses, finance, and wealth, but it's trending to become a wealthier and wealthier city, which means that the area we have within the downtown core has to be responsive to many things. But we need to understand that not everything the city is going to ultimately need can be accommodated within the core. So one of the first realizations is we need affordable housing. Some of it needs to be in the core as much as we can manage, but at the way that property values have evolved, the cost of construction, the desire to go vertical, that makes affordable housing even less and less affordable. So we need to be cognizant that some of these problems that we have, or challenges, are going to have to be accommodated in other parts of the city. So that means we have to figure out how to get those people into the city, because they support the city. They are the workforce. They are the people that come for jobs. So we need to look at, and this map shows you, that we really imagine our task, which is a postage stamp, but we're actually thinking about it as everything from Lake Worth all the way up to Riviera, all the way out west, because that's our market that brings people in here that are going to be supporting all the great things that need to happen. So I want you to be thinking when you're looking at your maps that what we're looking at is the end of the line, but that we need to be looking further out. So we're going to be very interested in all of that, because this is your destination. And then finally, we love the idea that West Palm is such a progressive city. We need to protect it, we need to maintain it, we need it to become equitable for all, a place where everyone is comfortable, because if we don't do that, it will just simply trend into the wealthy suburb that it will ultimately become if we're not thinking about diversity and equity and access for everybody, because we don't want West Palm Beach to be suffering the problems that Key West has and other places where nobody can afford to be there, but everybody wants to be there, and you don't have a workforce and you don't have the jobs, and accessibility becomes challenging. So we're going to run through quickly the 4 quadrants. One is in the Northwest. We're laying out some challenges for us to discuss. One is we need to look at how we can make new connectivity so that the Northwest neighborhood can share in the development and the progress of the rest of the city. It's also a highly desirable part of the city to be living in if you can figure out how to make that happen, because it's near in, it's got a lot of character, landscaping, the heat island effect. I mean, all the things about that old single-family neighborhood has a lot of culture, but it also has a lot of quality potentially. But it's been not able to share entirely. We're missing core services. It's hard to find a grocery store. It's hard to find many other things that are necessary for daily life. Pedestrian mobility it's easy to walk around, but it's not so easy to find transit. If you don't have a car, you're kind of stuck. So we also have other issues of housing and affordability and missing comfort, meaning opportunities for services and retail. So we're going to be proposing ideas to revitalize some of the corridors, increase connectivity, which we're going to show you in a moment. The second quadrant is the Northeast, which has kind of, it's almost like an internalized enclave. It's not very well connected to the rest of the city. It has an uneven public realm. It's got beautiful old houses and a lot of historic qualities. But again, it's lacking transit access, and it's also doesn't have a lot of available land for new housing, so we have to be thinking about how to integrate that. The eastern core has just exploded over these years. Hard to find a site. The people we talk to are really very anxious to generate bigger, taller, more robust buildings in order to justify the cost of the land and the desirability of being here. There's a tremendous amount of investment that's already happened. And the waterfront is not what it should be. We see that as a great opportunity. We know the city has been working at this for a while, but we think that the magic bullet hasn't yet been found. We're looking at how to really reactivate the waterfront. By the time you walk down Clematis and you get to that point, it should be a wow, and it's not. And we need to think about how do we create that amazing waterfront public space as something that the entire community can work on. And we have some ideas on that. We have the climate infrastructure issues that we need to talk about from a resilience point of view. And when you start looking at Okeechobee, we were wondering if we should use the word hostile. But I can only imagine, unless you're a sprinter, it's not exactly the kind of street you want to comfortably attack. It's so this whole southern part of the city, in a sense, at least to us it seems, is somewhat disconnected. We talk to people who seem to have no problem crossing the street, but we know for a fact that not everyone is going to be comfortable doing that. And we also think it's an incredible opportunity because of all the communities to the west to really focus on finally bringing transit into the city and having it appear at Okeechobee in a way where the city can begin to basically integrate smaller scale shuttles and communication systems so that we can bring everybody in outside of the car and have them leave the city also in transit and basically generate what I was talking about a minute ago, which is solving some of the core problems outside the core. We have to have transit for that to work. Okeechobee is a beautiful street, but we got to figure out how to manage it in a way where we can make all the other neighborhoods easily accessible to the downtown. And then finally, the area around the cultural district also needs work. It's a real opportunity, we think, for a mobility connection from Okeechobee. It has the beautiful park. What we understand is that park is not as utilized as it might be. We're also looking at other places in the city to generate additional open space and park. And it's really just a very congested moment in time when you enter the city through Okeechobee. and you're trying to get to the cultural center and to the school and to, you know, Rosemary and et cetera. So we think there's a lot of opportunity there. So now let me share with you just kind of a personal approach to what we've been developing in our firm as our philosophy. We think that in order to understand the evolution of a city, it's almost like, if you're familiar with the term fractal, the universe is filled with things that are at different scale, but they have similar characteristics. You know, you can look at a tree, and you can look at a leaf, and you can see the similarity in its form. You know, it's got the major stem, it's got all the tributaries, and you can look at life that way in many different things. When we look at cities, we see them as a series of evolutionary cells that are coming together to form one unified whole, but not every part of that city is evolved to the same level. So we have highly performing neighborhoods. We have neighborhoods that are thriving, but they might not necessarily yet be highly performing. And then as you go through it, you see neighborhoods that have opportunity for growth. And then you have neighborhoods that are basically disinvested. The good news is, from what we see compared to 20 years ago, we don't really have any neighborhoods in the urban core that we would think of as dangerous or disinvested. But we do have neighborhoods that are still not ready for growth because we've got to fix their connectivity, we've got to provide stable components for ownership of housing, not just housing that's occupied by renters and absentee landlords, which we do have in parts of the city. So our thinking is that we want to begin to look at this downtown from the standpoint of how can we begin to understand the different parts of the city so that we can begin to design through vision and planning and zoning how we can make improvements. You're not going to take a disinvested part of the city and put a cultural arts center there. They're going to need a grocery store. They're going to need maybe a substation for police and fire. They're going to need safety first. But you're also likewise not going to take a highly performing part of the city and begin to think about, well, how can I tear down a block and put up affordable housing? That's not going to happen either. So what I'm trying to say is each component part needs its own specific answer. And that's our approach, and that's what we believe will be tailoring the strategies by neighborhood need, and also making sure no district is left behind and that no highly performing area is taken for granted. Because I don't know how many of you are sailors, but when I'm in a boat sailing, I know that if I'm not under power with wind in the sail, I can't control that boat. So if I'm going to be highly performing, I have to make sure that I keep inventing new things to keep me highly performing, because if not, I'm going to start sliding backwards. So every single part of the city is going to require a particular answer. And that's how we've gotten to this approach to doing this work. We first want to understand the evolution of the city. Then we want to make sure that we understand the vision, meaning the cultural attributes, the transportation, the mobility, the community development, the engagement, the housing, so that we can look at all the different neighborhoods and try to formulate that magic sauce of zoning that has, as part of it, incentives and penalties for non-performance. And, you know, you've got to really set up the system in order to get the result that you want. So tonight, we're actually going to be talking about vision, because after today, we are now into the next phase where we're going to start wanting to develop the regulations that are going to implement the vision. We did that in 2007 and it worked. Next stage, we're going to do the same thing at a different elevation. We're now much further along, our issues are different, our expectations are higher, and we want you to give us feedback to make sure that the things that we're talking about and the conversations that you're going to have at the table are in fact representative of the vision that you want to see for the city. And if you don't want to see it, you need to tell us so we can bubble it up into our group so that we can begin to work with that. So what are our districts today? Well, in a way, West Palm Beach has all of these stages all at one time. And we created a map that may or may not be exactly right, but it's mostly right. That the area in dark blue, where the cultural arts is, where Rosemary, I still call it City Place, has been evolving, the level of quality, the development of the streets, the sidewalks, the stores, the feeling of safety, the quality of what's there is at a very highly performing stature. And it's just getting better and better because of the new office buildings coming in, the people that are coming in. We're all excited about the new growth that's going to happen with hopefully Vanderbilt exercising its movement into the city and the Cleveland Hospital. So we're looking at the city, but those areas are not there yet. They still got to go there. That the area around Rosemary is already highly performing. The Northwest District, as we know, is maybe the least improved over these years. There's just a very high preponderance of absentee landlords and renters, and we need to be careful that we don't initiate displacement, but we need to have a really serious conversation about, should we be thinking about making more density? Should we be thinking that instead of 1 or 2 dwelling units per lot, we should maybe be aggregating some lots and making apartment buildings in order to provide for more affordability and more people being able to live in an area. And then the areas that are surrounding around Clear Lake, pretty much built out, but going through changes. But Lofton and Brelsford, beautiful historic neighborhoods, they're really good, and we need to maybe not do too much. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about is what is the vision, but you have to understand from our point of view, we need to know how far we should go with our planning. If it's not broken, we don't want to fix it. If it's already beautiful, maybe good enough to leave it alone. So we need to know where to put the energy, where not to put the energy, and that's why we're having this conversation. So the 4 elements that we're most focused on are the culture and the character, which is about what to preserve and where we should build our plan around the culture and the character that exists and make sure we don't lose it. Transportation and mobility, in my view, is one of the biggest issues we have to deal with. We have to figure out not only how to get people in and out of the city, but what is the best way for circulating within the city. So we're going to be proposing things like, some of these streets maybe should get less traffic. And we should remove cars, not entirely, but make them slower so that we can increase scooters and bikes, and everything is so close. This city is amazing. You've got 2 railroads. You've got the Intracoastal and the lake. You've got 2 bodies of water, 2 railroads, an incredible topography, a huge amount of investment in this tiny little place. I mean, I've got to say, it's one of the richest in its fundamentals of any city I've seen in Florida. It's an amazing opportunity, and there's no reason that we need to fill it up with cars and be frustrated by congestion. There's plenty of other ways to move 10 blocks one way or another without having to get into the car. And then finally, community development for us is about cultural centers and housing and things like that we need to improve. And then finally, open space and resiliency. So in terms of culture, We need to preserve the identity. There's so much cool stuff here. There's already a lot of character. We're really not worried about it. We need to just make sure that we can maintain it. In terms of transportation and mobility, we got issues. We need to figure out how to move people more easily. We need to figure out how to work with the county and make sure that we get transit right away. There's a lot of bias toward transit. If I don't have a light rail, I don't want to use it. Well, you know, in order to solve the problem, we might have to make some compromises. In order to do something quickly, shuttles, bus rapid transit from the west into the city, that's what makes sense because it's easy to implement. Okeechobee has many lanes. We can certainly make one dedicated. There will always be people angry that we took away a lane. But think about the benefit. The benefit is instead of sitting in traffic for half an hour or more to get in, if I could get on a transportation mode, whatever it is, and get here in 10 minutes without having to suffer all of that, there'd be a lot more people that'd be willing to take transit. All you have to do is be in the HOV lane or 95 while you're stuck, and you see these cars whizzing by at 75 miles an hour, and you say, God, I wish I was going further. I could be in that lane. I think that we're going to learn that the value of time is more important than what we ascribe to the value of the particular mode. And I'm hoping we can get there. But we have bikes, we have scooters, we have all kinds of micromobility. And then from the standpoint of community development, we're very happy with the built environment that's out here. We need to think about what kind of housing can we create for which neighborhood. You're definitely going to get condos in the most wealthy part of the city. You're definitely going to get rentals in other emerging parts of the city. Our challenge is how do we make sure it stays mixed? How do we make sure that we get at least some of the affordable housing here in the core? But we have to understand that we're not going to solve our affordable housing entirely within the core. So we have to be thinking, where else can we be putting it? How else can we change zoning in other parts of the city to allow for more units to happen instead of just a few because of the cost? And then finally, open space. We need to make sure that we protect open space because that is in fact our living room for the city. And open space is more than just the parks. It's also the sidewalks. It's the street itself. Clematis is such a changed street from the day that we were here initially. It's just delightful. You can close it, it becomes a plaza. You can open it, it's slow moving. It's safe to ride the bike there. Nobody seems worried about it. It's not like riding on Banyan or one of the other busy streets. So, the planning agencies, I'm not going to take you through these maps. They have lots of ideas, so do we, and we're actively engaged in working with them to try to figure out what ideas could be contained within the vision of the document that we're going to be putting forward. But we have some ideas on big moves, and here's where we get to have fun and just throw things out there that we're thinking about, and you get to think about whether they're good ideas or not. So, in terms of the culture and the character, we think that Northwest District would benefit from some commercial redevelopment along Tamarind, possibly the extension of Rosemary. We think that the neighbors in the north are just going to be increasing in numbers. Nora is building across the rail. If we can start thinking about smaller opportunities for business development, that will generate more organic wealth within the neighborhood, and we think that that will make an improvement. We're also looking at 7th Street as a proposed bridge over the rail for bike ped use and emergency vehicles only, not for cars, so that we can, for the first time, actually connect Nora with Northwest District and allow the east and the west to begin to be connected. And the same is true toward Banyan. We want to open up more streets and make a connection to the south. These are all remnants of segregation where every city we work in, I promise you, it's the same everywhere. The black communities were segregated not only through legislation, but through the way the city was built. You'll notice the city streets do not connect. It was by intention back then, and should be our intention now, to open it up. So we have some ideas there on that. We want to end up with some additional mixed uses and opportunities for new housing. ADUs are already permitted, and we think that it might be possible to have accessory dwelling units in back of single-family houses as a way of easily making some additional affordable housing. We're looking at clematis going all the way through from the intracoastal all the way through to Clear Lake, so that we can make sure that there's commercial redevelopment along there, so that spine can also be improved and work. We're looking at opportunities for transportation and movement. We're very interested in, we know it's not easy, but we are very interested in trying to find a way for a transportation mode to connect through a dedicated lane all the way to the garage at the convention center. Because we keep hearing over and over again that that garage, which is massive, is essentially empty almost all the time. And there's no reason that we couldn't make that kind of a low-hanging fruit for our mobility mode, and then once there, have an overpass of some beautiful design across Okeechobee that would allow for some form of transportation connection directly into the core of the city. The other benefit is the communities to the south could use that same connection to then make it easy for everybody in the south to come in directly into the city also. So we know that's been controversial, but we're not afraid of controversy because this is the place for that. It's called the vision document for a reason. We're not sure that we can implement it, but it's aspirational. It's what we're looking for, and we want to build our plan around what we're going to do for those improvements. By the same token, we know Fern Street is about to be connected up, hopefully one of these days. We're looking at the Flagler Drive and saying to ourselves, we don't really believe it should have the configuration that it currently does. It should be an asset that is the most beautiful waterfront for the entire city. And right now, there's only a sliver of opportunity next to the water, too many lanes of traffic, and unfortunately, not a great public space on the other side of the street. So we would like to encourage the idea that that becomes a primary objective for the downtown, because it is, in fact, the iconic central space for the city, and it should be better than it currently is. We're looking at new bike ped improvements and pedestrian connections. We're looking at another park somewhere around what we call the TOD area, around Banyan. We have too many surface parking lots. We think we should put some energy into collaborating with the school system and other owners to say, listen, maybe we can build you a garage. In exchange, you give us some land. We can have some more public space, because the hole in the donut is the area west of the FEC line, west of Brightline. Between Brightline and Tri-Rail, we have a lot of area, a lot of land, most of it vacant, a lot of it with governmental uses that over time may end up wanting to leave. And we have there, I think, our best opportunity for the redevelopment of the preponderance of new housing and new opportunities in the city. We're going to need to support the university. There's going to be need for dorms. There's lots of things that could be done that are going to be feeding the industry here with more jobs, and I think that that's really the best opportunity for it. And then we want to be evaluating the different zoning where after time we may find that we don't need quite as many districts as we have today. We might be able to compress them now that the city has started evolving in different ways. We may be able to simplify some of it and consolidate some of it. So we want to look at how we can use zoning as a tool to, especially in the areas that we identified here in green, where we have opportunity for redevelopment. And then finally, we want to make connections for recreation along the Intracoastal, along Clear Lake, around the Tri-Rail Park, around a new West Side Anchor Park, we're calling it. We want to make a gateway connection into Howard Park. So we think that as the city evolves with more and more people, the importance of open space goes up dramatically. Because in order to make more intensity, you also have to have more opportunity for recreation. And then finally, in terms of resiliency, the map on the left with the little brown is showing you where the heat islands are. And what we want to do is we transferred that into the area of green, where we want to make sure that we can get a better tree canopy, that we can deal with drainage in a way that we're not just dumping it. We want to be able to use it through building up the aquifer and doing all the good sustainability issues, and work with infiltration as a way of doing it. We know that the ridge is on Sapodilla, so as the water drains away from Sapodilla, which is the highest point, we should be able to capture it into the groundwater and retain our water and keep everything alive and healthy with less opportunity and requirement for additional irrigation. And then we've had a lot of conversation today, actually, about what we call POPs, privately owned public spaces. We also have quite a few publicly owned private spaces. So we want to take a look at that and make sure that we continue the process of intensive development, having on its own site places that give us respite, where we could have, like we have downtown, some of these little pocket parks on the edges or in courtyards, because that adds so much quality to the experience of the city, and we want to spread that out more. And then we want to strengthen the waterfronts with a more robust trail system, as you can see on the diagram, all the way up and down the Intracoastal, and we're currently working with our great landscape partner to be looking also at how to do something with Clear Lake, which is another opportunity for recreation. So, when you put all that together, you got a map all full of comments. You're each going to have an opportunity to look at them in your own quadrant, whichever one you pick. We're going to have 4, and Grace in a little while will take you through it. But first, we're going to hear from Jerome, who is our expert on how to take ideas and make them reality. Jerome?
Thank you, Bernard. So my slides are going to be a little bit more conceptual than Bernard's. And because at this stage of vision, we're really approaching a city that is a high-functioning, highly successful city, both for retail, for office, for housing, and looking at what is missing and where can you improve in a way, and where can you add value in the realm of programming and governance to what are all these design moves and new additions to your streetscape, to your transportation network, to your building environment. So just 2 words about me. I'm going to try to be brief. I think I have 10 minutes, so I'll try to make it work in that. I spent most of my career in public-private partnership organizations managing high-use public spaces, mostly in New York, such as Bryant Park. I don't know who's been to the Bryant Park, show of hands. Quite a few people. Okay, so it's famous for all its chairs and its gorgeous bathrooms, and a concept we're going to come back to, which is that of hospitality. And the High Line, Times Square, and then I ran the Fifth Avenue Association as well. And one of the ideas that we're exploring through these ideas for West Palm Beach is one of very simple understanding of how public space is supposed to work, and why in most places in North America it seems to not perform as well as it does if you're, for example, traveling to Europe or to South America, and you see places that are full of vibrancy and people, and you're like, hey, how come this doesn't happen when we're back home? And one of the main reasons, and you heard Bernard speak about some of the ways we want to correct it already, is that the public space in the US, in general, tends to be cut off from the buildings nearby by roads. That sounds like a very basic thing, but that's something we have all the time. And that's something that's happening, for example, at the waterfront here. If you go down Clematis, you can have these 4 lanes of traffic that are separating you from the waterfront, and that are sapping really the energy that is the natural interplay of the building environment with the public space. So that's an example, typical example. On the left here you see Campus Martius, which is actually a sort of fake public space in Detroit that has been reclaimed from roadbed, except for a small area in the center, and that has become one of our most vibrant spaces in the city, contrasted with plaza, the traditional European plaza in Verona, where you can barely see the distinction between the roadway and the public space, and all the energy flows from the buildings into the public space and allows for all types of uses, informal, formal markets, kids playing, etc., into the center area. You could find hundreds of examples of those, but that's really something that we want to bring to this next phase of the master planning with SCAPE, is to say, okay, how can we make sure that these future public spaces that we're envisioning for the city, whether it's a new park companion, whether it's spaces along the intercoastal, whether it's a remodeling of Clematis and Centennial Park and Flagler, that they're much more connected to the building environment, that vehicles can access, yes, but we can, the energy from the building can flow into the space. So in schematic form, it's what you see here, that, you know, the blue being the energy. What we have in many places is what you see on the left, where the road kills that connection, but when you manage to connect them, you have that. And if you don't have it, if you still have to deal with this road network, what you need to do, and this is a transition to programming, is that you need to basically bring the activity that typically lies in the buildings into the space itself. You need concessions, you need food, you need children's playgrounds, you need all sorts of things that are going to bring people there, keep them there, keep them engaged into the space, and play that role that usually the built environment would play. So, I'm not sure if it's very readable in the room, but this is just a way of looking at most cities, and here in North America we're actually very advanced in this, have found ways to bring to maintain their downtowns, to bring programming to their downtowns, to solve classic real estate problems such as, well, this area is not leasing well, or we don't have this type of uses. And we've invented all types of structures, typically public-private partnerships of different types, to resolve this. The cities alone tend not to be able to do it, right? That's what we were talking about before. And so we rely on partners. So here in West Palm Beach, you have a super capable CRA that's sort of making big moves in terms of real estate and developing properties and sort of positioning uses. And then you have a DDA downtown that is taking care of everyday sort of care and control of the space. But in a way, what I see when we were looking and speaking to people and determining things is that there's maybe not as much of a programming layer as you might find in other areas. And that might be where some of these public spaces, whether the pubs or whether Centennial Park or around the N5 Theater, they lack that energy. You tend to have a lot of big events, like the boat show, like, you know, your first day evening activities, but there's not that sort of everyday layer of activity that's there. And you might want to look at that. And there's other places that have gone through this and that have figured out ways to solve for that. Here are some examples of what you could consider. It's certainly the case in Philadelphia. Philadelphia had a DDA similar to what you have, but then at some point in the 2010s, they delegated the management of their main public spaces, Dilworth Plaza and some other public squares downtown, to their downtown district. And that has been tremendously successful for them in terms of bringing more activity, reducing overall operational costs, and driving traffic downtown. Similarly, in the center, there's an organization called 3CDC in Cincinnati, a slightly different model that is a big partnership with the private sector that has actually separate investment funds to target distressed properties and redevelop them. And they've been a developer of housing, they've been a developer of office space and retail. They took over a downtrodden neighborhood called Over the Rhine that had 91% retail vacancy rate, which is now completely leased up. Quite a remarkable transformation. But they did the same thing. The city, in partnership with them, allowed for a delegation of the programming and management of 7 of their main downtown public spaces to great effect. And finally, there's the one that I think might be the closest one to what we're talking about here, again, which is Detroit, where you had a mix of a foundation of people interested in downtown and the local DDA. There again, finally starting to manage 1 public space with West Campus Martius, then 4, and now managing a network of 14 different public spaces across the entire downtown, programming more than 1,200 events per year, and really developing an entire vision that is very much focused on locals first. And in all these projects, the vision tends to be about what's authentic to the place and being about the locals first, and then attracting visitors from outside the core, both citywide and regionally, and sometimes nationally, in the case of Detroit's winter activations. But being able to look comprehensively at a full network of all these public spaces, and you can see that some of them are big and some of them are tiny, but finding differentiated uses for them, and finding ways to make them relevant and activated throughout the day, throughout the year. And that's by focusing on the locales, this idea of urban innovation and connecting the usage of the public space to the desires of people in the everyday. That could be for places for work, places for recreation, places for getting together with friends and family, and landscaping. I mean, there's a bunch of different services that they provide, but this idea really of, okay, we can design and create these public spaces, but someone needs to take care of them at a higher grade than just purely landscaping and everyday cleanliness, really reaching into programming, and programming with a vision for activation of all types of activities that correspond to the needs and the desires and the wants of the population. And when you have these kinds of organizations, you can go really deep into partnerships and make relationships with organizations, both civic, cultural, and commercial, and public to some degree, to make all types of things happen that you would not have thought possible. So I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but this is to give you a sense of how much stuff just happens in these public spaces with all these companies and these groups that brings life to them. So in your environment here in West Palm Beach, that could be an overall parks conservancy, that could be increasing the responsibilities of the DDA, or it doesn't really matter the shape that it takes. I think that the parks conservancy in this case is what makes the most sense. And organizing its activity around very clear missions, that they would take care of them, they would program them, they would reach out to the private sector and filter inquiries coming in to activate and to make things happen that we can't even imagine today. What I'm saying is support a healthy mix of commerce and culture. Sometimes we're very shy in North America about bringing in the right kind of commerce in the public space, but people actually tend to love it, particularly when it's places to eat and drink, or people want an ice cream, or maybe a beach toy. As long as it's appropriate, as long as it's suited to the use of the public space, it will only bring more vitality. Taking care of hospitality, and over time, most of these spaces get to financial self-sufficiency, so they tend to actually stop being a burden on the public purse. And yeah, make a great space for locals and visitors will follow. And when you do that, you tend to have places, so this is an image of Grand Park on what is probably a nice spring day, which we've not had this year in New York, I can tell you that. But where people feel safe, people feel comfortable, people want to come back to, and there's really this sense that these are hospitable spaces. Just like your great hotels and restaurants take care of their public, so in the same way, your public spaces will take care of the people coming in. Very briefly, these are the key elements that come into it. It's food and beverage. It's being a host for the culture of your city. It's playful elements for both kids and grown-ups. Summer to winter, here it's more about how do we combat the very, very hot and humid summer. It's this idea of softscape and color and just the quality of the environment. Washrooms are a big deal. Washrooms are a very powerful way to communicate that the space is safe and taken care of. Cleanliness, sense of safety, again the beauty, good lighting, and clear communication. And finally, because I'm running over, it's to say that it's a programming vision that is rooted in the everyday. Most places, most of the clients that I speak to tend to focus on what's really big. You know, I want Taylor Swift, I want the NFL draft, I want the road show. And that's great, that's part of what makes the city active, and that's what fills hotel rooms, and that's what brings activity and gets companies excited. But it has actually very little to do with the everyday success of the public space. The everyday success of a public space comes from the daily life, the ability to choose shade over sun, the quality of restrooms, the food, the movable seating, the playground, the little concert, etc. And from that you build slightly larger things that come in week, every week. You know, it could be bingo night, it could be salsa dancing, it could be crochet, and these are all things, by the way, that I've done or that we've done in many public spaces. And then larger monthly ones, and then you have your bigger events. But the focus is really on the everyday and making it work for people when they leave their house and say, oh, I can go there. There's always going to be something. There's always going to be a crowd, and I'm always going to be welcome. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we have a few minutes for questions, and then we're going to ask Grace to come up and explain the table event. So does anyone have a question for us? Yes.
So on the waterfront section, there are 4 zones you divided up into, and there are sort of positions that have been established. For example, about the fact that the waterfront is not utilized enough. Who created that assumption? Because most people think the waterfront is overrun. so where did that come from? Who created that?
That's coming from our team and stakeholders that we've spoken with, because we noticed that as you arrive into that space, it's very difficult to actually get to the water. The marina is fantastic. It takes up that moment in time where the marina exists, but in terms of the waterfront itself, it feels very disconnected from the rest of the city. For the reasons that we talked about from an urban design, and for the reason that Jerome just spoke about in terms of his analogy of US versus Europe, when you're at the waterfront, there's really nothing there except to walk along the promenade and then decide to come back. So we're looking at how can we do more with that? You want to comment on that, Jerome?
Sure, and look, I don't know the city as well as you, obviously, but if you think about some of the, what I'm going to call the great waterfronts, they have the ability for people to stay, to increase their dwell time, and to make it part of a connected experience. Like ideally, we would want someone to be at the waterfront and to be on Clematis and to shop and to have dinner and to, but it's more of a comprehensive, longer experience. And right now, it just feels like you're there. And yes, as Bernard was saying, you can walk around. It's beautiful. But what's the comprehensive experience? What's the full activity?
Oh, but that's consistent with other studies we've done. It's also consistent with waterfront, doorway, feedback. feedback we've gotten from residents, which have indicated that although kind of overwhelming folks don't want a marina, let's say, there, but they do want more activity, more space, public space, better public space. So I think that is consistent with what we're hearing.
And we're also talking about 2 waterfronts. Please keep that in mind. And by the way, quadrant number 3 will be covering at least the one on the east side, and then there's another quadrant that will be looking at it on the west side along Clear Lake.
Anyone else? Yes, the lady in pink?
Was any thought given to both Vernia and Datura over the Brightline tracks, like putting a walkway over them or something? Because you've cut off, not you guys, but hundreds of people live on Hibernia near the waterfront, hundreds. We can't go straight up Hibernia anymore. Same thing with Datura.
No, we haven't yet looked at that. We will. Next.
I have a follow-up comment on the downtown waterfront. And this is a map produced by West Palm Beach. It's by the Parks and Recreation Department. And in the downtown area, there is no green space other than the downtown waterfront. So if someone's looking for a place just to relax and not feel activated and get away from the activation and commercialization, all we have is the waterfront. So I'm deeply concerned when I hear comments about activation, commercialization, restaurants. We have that in the city realm, but there is no other green space. And you've all evidently been to Europe, South America, etc. And green space is very important for the population of the city and the workers that need a place to go to and relax. So I'm an advocate to protect and preserve the green space of the downtown waterfront.
Thank you.
And just another comment related to the waterfront. As someone who lives south of downtown, near the water, Flagler is often my best route to get downtown, and it's the prettiest drive. It avoids Dixie, which is often very highly trafficked. And so I would hate to see lanes disappear from Flagler at any point along the way.
Thank you. Noted. This lady has a question. AJ? Yes.
Fortunately, I was here when you did the last, study and everything, and participated, and it's beautiful what you did. And I remember the challenge of having the Flagler Drive going right through, but no one wanted to get rid of the road. And I find that I live on the northern side of Flagler Drive, that's one of the nicest promenades. What it needs, I think, is shade. That's part of the problem. Even the Great Lawn is a beautiful space, but there's, like you said, you go down there, there's nothing. I have to take my dog down there. I go there for 5 minutes, there's nothing to do, so we leave. So I think your point is well taken to have, it doesn't have to be food and restaurants, because they blocked any kind of concession stands on the waterfront. They don't want that going on. They want it to be nice, clean, open space. So I don't know if you'll have pushback from the government about that, but I think that if you, had a dog park or something where there's some activity, I think your points are very well taken.
And
Shade.
yeah, and I just want to say, it's about appropriateness. It's not about saying, hey, we have a formula and it works every time, and you just got to do this. But that's not the case. I think the case is to find in every community what are the local aspirations, what makes sense, and at what scale, okay? I'm not going to say, well, you should have an 800-seat restaurant on the waterfront. That's not what this is about at all. It's saying, hey, how can you provide an environment that better responds to the various aspirations of the community and of the people who live there? So, yeah, thank you.
I mean, it's ironic that we're talking about the waterfront when our mission is the city. But it just goes to show how important that is on everybody's mind. So let me just make it clear. When we met with, what's it called, NDA, the downtown, the big issue was not the utilization of it, it was the fact that it seemed like it went on for too long. It was overdone, like this gentleman was saying. What we're saying is not that we want to take it away or change it in a way that would be less. We see it as an opportunity. We have acres and acres of open space, and it could be so much better. And that's what we're after. So I just want to disabuse the idea that we want to turn it into a shopping mall. That is not the idea. The idea is we believe in green space. In fact, one of the things we've been looking at in every single quadrant is where can we add more parks? And the idea of what we call the POPs, which we instituted during the last zoning, is that when you have a major development, you have to dedicate that passive, reflection type space to the public, and you can see them throughout the downtown. So we do have that as part of our pocket park plan, but we also are interested, frankly, in the iconic. And that is the iconic space of the city. I remember when there was a big fight over whether the library comes down and the kids' water. I mean, there's always resistance to change, but we think it could be much better, and that's what we're proposing.
Just one thing also clarify, just and you kind of alluded to it. This is the downtown master plan, so kind of last conversation there was more about the waterfront, but this is all downtown. So the focus really, the waterfront, a lot of the focus as far as feedback goes, as a lot of you probably participated in the waterfront your way, and we'll be presenting the findings of that soon, which is more about activation, the public space on the waterfront. There's a lot of ideas that come out of that. Shade was a big thing that came out of those discussions. So I want the folks here to focus on the waterfront for this discussion. That was a piece of what was discussed here, but this is about the entire downtown.
Right. I know you have a question. Is there anyone else? We'd like to see anybody. Yes, please.
So we have a huge, huge green space at the foot of Clematis that is unused except for 5 days a year for the boat show. It's just a crime that you don't plant some trees there and make use of that beautiful, gigantic green space.
There, yes. That's what we're looking talking about. Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, so are we ready for the table?
Okay, thank you, everyone. For the next 40 minutes, we're going to break out in groups. I'm going to walk you through what the division of quadrants means. We've divided the downtown into 4 areas, and each of the 4 groups and your colors represent the quadrants of the city. We'll spend about 40 minutes discussing 4 topic areas that Bernard presented about character and scale, about transportation and mobility, about development, and the 4th one being about open space and resiliency. The 4 quadrants are divided as follows. I have a red table here with your red dots. Again, I do want to clarify that if you feel that you would like to participate in another table, in another quadrant, you're welcome to do that. You can also roam around the room. Quadrant number 1 covers several districts, the Historic Northwest, the Quadrille Business District, and the TOD Development District. Okay? Quadrant number 2, over here with Dadis Avila facilitating, and this table will have Surya Yafar and Andrew facilitating. Here, Dadis Avila and Amanda. Quadrant 2 includes Brailsford Park, Nora, Providencia Park, and Lofton districts. Quadrant 3 there in the corner, yellow dot, facilitated by myself, Jerome, and Peshwan. We are covering Clematis, Flagler Waterfront, the Okeechobee Business District, and the Quadrille Garden area. And then quadrant 4, which is colored blue, includes Clear Lake, the Cultural Arts District, and City Place. Okay? I do want to remind you that as you're discussing each of these different components, themes, that you identify within your group, someone that can report back to the general group for about 10 minutes towards the end of our time here together, which will be close to 7 o'clock. Okay? Yeah. Any questions? No? Okay, let the games begin. Thank you.
Peter Cummings, Bill Watson. We had a Zoom call a few months ago about tax credits. Yeah, tax credits. Oh, right. So, and he's from Detroit. And, yeah.
Six and one. That's why you're up.
Christy, how are you?
Oh, sorry, can you get that?
Trying to get through here.
Because you got the halves on one side.
He does what Julie tells him is what happens.
No, you're good. Here's a cake holder.
Exactly. Very weird about dark hairs in Detroit. Yeah, my family, my mother and my family are still living. In fact, I'm going back a couple weeks to the front town. So, our place is from next year. So it's great. I'm going to go over and jump in group one. Exactly where I have to go. Yep, I'm going to just go ahead. Nice to meet you.
The doctors love it because if we didn't act right, oh, this is where the breakthrough is, real funky and pill or whatever, you know. I love doing it, you know, and I only do it like 3 shifts a week, 5 hours. Try to keep it around, you know. Yeah. So other than that, I'm here most days, 10 days and so on.
Have any initial ideas?
Now we're ready to have like some other nature be kind to us. Let's start with that.
Jot down again. You guys like to share them. We can write them on the map. We have Where do you see our opportunities and the challenges with that?
Oh, is that my bonus? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no.
Southeast corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is Narcissus, right there. We're talking about here, right, Jack? Yeah, so here, where the World of Beer was.
World of Beer.
So it's right on the edge of the park. Guide fast.
Do you think it would be better if they were located further west?
So, one of the problems is that our construction process one across the street. It was on that day, quite expensive. Yeah, 300 Daniel.
And then you got that little surface lot.
That's the only parking, that's not the parking.
You got a tiny little surface lot.
Yeah.
Remember now, two of those that you just mentioned are privatized, and one is public. So there is going to be a difference in cost and accessibility. All those outcasts for a while.
Any ideas, any additional ideas about what?
For eating, shopping, and a place to spend time not so much. There's a lot of vacancy on the main drag where some has tried to exist, not forever, but as the heart of downtown, that's definitely an opportunity. People can go in there and a handful of places shopping. Right. Yeah.
They have two different fields.
You also have two different sets of rules. There's things you're not allowed to do on clematis that are in the code that you are not permitted to do. And then you have the minor depths that are required on how they get structured inside the building. And every time someone wants to change it, it takes a year to go through a process. So it's very difficult to reutilize the space in those private spaces on clematis. And so you end up with probably some of that too. The word I used today, flexibility, is going to be key on almost all of this, right? Being able to move with the markets and move with the needs as things go, as opposed to an ideal form that should be.
Instead of place, the landscaping, that area is beautiful. But when you go to Clematis, the landscaping is not at the same level as City Place. So we need better landscaping. Clematis, beautiful. We're selling this as a destination as an elevated, but you go to Clematis, which is the main street, it's not as elevated. Very important. The clematis businesses are very unique, right? So that also in terms of use, space, can be challenging. Some cities have looked at ways in which they can activate the alleyways to allow for activity to happen both on clematis streets and other type of environment.
Take place, no service occurs in the alley anymore. Now it all occurs out on the street. Lots of businesses, yes, there are lots of people with trash. Why did you pointing out they didn't get rid of them, but they don't use the alley because they're carried on their sides. That's been a problem. A lot of us in construction, reconstruction, a lot of things multiple times, but more business, out of business than anything else. 98, 2000, people suffer. I mean, it's not that the things that we've done are helpful, but something happens to businesses in the meantime where people stop the habit of coming down here. And it's a whole long history of that.
Has clematis had a life that's been more successful than it is today? When vision, what is one life today?
Peak in 98, 2000, bomb and bomb.
Right.
Yeah. So the thought was always as more residential pedestrian bridge that goes over
right, as a main street.
It's also, it's not all day. I mean, the way we're structured is you have to go out from clematis before you can get to the sum of that residential, right? So that you start getting, because from the way it's structured, right? And I actually agree Clematis needs to sort of stay structurally, literally structurally, the way that it is, right? It's our core. We got to have it. I think the work that's been done, the parklets and different things are phenomenal, right? It does add a lot of the place piece. But then you have to go 4 blocks either way before you can get to a 10 or 15 story building with all the residents who then have something right below them and aren't going to. So you more of the connectivity, more of the drawing somehow. I don't know how to do it because why not? But if there's a way to draw it back to it and maybe create more that's right behind it, right behind those historic buildings, and create more of that opportunity where people can flow in. And again, to what Joe was saying, like the alleyways are between the back of the building on Clematis and the back of the building on Banyan. And if you can start activating that a little bit, you might draw people back from that way too. And more redevelopment. I know. I think that's what we're both missing.
So what I'm gonna say is going to create a more of a traffic problem, so like, except what I'm going to like say is gonna create more traffic, however, another way to activate Clematis from a program that's like at one point the 500 blocks shut down for events and things like that, and similar to how Rosemary, the city place, oftentimes gets shut down for art shows and yoga classes. And we know the Green Market is a big draw that shuts down the Street every Saturday. So while yes, it does create congestion, it also creates a destination for people to volunteer and draws people in. So I think thinking about more essentially areas like that throughout the year can create opportunities for crowds to come alive in ways aside from the Green Market. Not as
Okay, very helpful. So we covered Clematis. Other opportunities that are culture character related. If not, we can move on to talk about mobility and transportation. Again, Clematis becomes a very iconic. We'll leave the waterfront for last, but we go to mobility and development.
One thing on Clematis, a few years ago, there was like, I think it was where Alpha was, they had like pop-ups going on. There were stores. Yeah, I don't remember, I think it was in that sort of alcove that was set back. There would be different vendors, smaller vendors.
Oh, we talked about 314 Clematis.
Yeah.
We talked about 314 when they were doing like thoroughfare. We had like pop-up businesses. Yeah. So
I thought that was a cool way for local businesses to, get a storefront temporarily, and then also create kind of a constant flow of new stuff on campus without having to lease an entire gymnasium size floor.
Is the idea in part to attract people who don't live here to come visit, or is it just for the people who are living here? Or do you?
Not necessarily. Can I see by a show at the end of residents here? We have a pretty big representation. And the rest of it.
Do you feel that the retail and then serves you?
So Jerome is asking, do you feel that the retail on Clematis serves you? Yeah.
The other day,
yeah.
And for me, people outside hey, free samples. And there's a mother and a child and the baby carriage. And then some sparkling marijuana is free. There's not enough.
Did everybody hear this, gentlemen? So not very family friendly.
Right, heckling for marijuana. Come on in, free samples.
Where's that? What's the
I was on
address?
I'll walk you after. By the way, you know why it's a marijuana dispensary? Because because they didn't want to serve, because the city didn't want to sell beer and wine. And they didn't allow what would have been a 7-Eleven, which they didn't like the brand, even though it was going to be a neighborhood market, because they didn't want 200 square feet of beer and wine.
They wanted convenience.
They called it a convenience, but they killed it on the beer and wine.
They allowed one 2 blocks away.
Right. I mean, that's the kind of thing that happened, that becomes the challenge, right? And 10 years, 15 years ago, it might have made sense, but with all of the people now here, we gotta have the things to the table. By the way, I wouldn't mind either. I don't live here. I work here. I worked in the same building for almost 30 years, and I walk downtown when it's not summer, or I'll get an e-bike, and I'll, like, it's great. And I'll go and pick some stuff up too, particularly if I'm working late or whatever. Right? So there's a whole vibrant piece to it.
And it's related to allowable uses and. Okay, let's move to transportation and mobility. It's okay. This gentleman, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't believe it. I just want to make a comment about the waterfront.
Okay, go there.
I've been on the first time consider myself East-West Road, yeah, were thought of as expressed concern about the commercialization. What they did was created nodes where it wasn't commercialized, but it was highly programmed so that there are ways to get there and things happening there that people from every socioeconomic problem. So I think it's time to look at
and I mentioned 2 waterfronts, right? Because it's also important to consider that you have this beautiful asset, but you also have enormous potential with Clear Lake. And right now, there's a very Australian Boulevard, it's a highway. And right now, with funding available to connect Fern Street from Australian Boulevard all the way to this waterfront, and make this a bike pedestrian street,
I want to call the governor, make sure it doesn't get straighter than the budget. Hit the budget. And you have a nice little pocket park right here.
Right, connect parks, this can be a very nicely shaded. They did that.
Well, this development.
Okay, yes, yes, which is part of the POPs, we call the privately owned public park.
I'd like to make a comment too. This point about the development, it's going to go up through, and there was a city owned, that it was called abandoned property, and the developer was able to get that abandoned property as part of its development. But it's a beautiful right to the waterfront, but now it's going to be commercialized. So my thought is, if there's any abandoned property in the city, give it to the Parks Department, let it be more green space, rather than giving it to the developer to commercialize it. Because this could have been a beautiful tree-lined bike lane with access to the river.
Now, this particular quadrant, scape or landscape architecture which looks at the areas in downtown. And this particular area, you envision downtown, you feel there are areas that are more hot than others? Do you get a sense for that? This particular district does not have. It actually does not map as the hottest, but yeah.
But it ain't great.
But the experience level quadrants are important because that's the answer with most city plays, Brian, East North. Not enough shade. Quadrille, Flagler. Those two have to have shade. like Brian, I've been here 30 years, living in Broadway in downtown Arlington, where residents in the daytime, well, I walk everywhere, I walk here, walk, you know, but that quadruple walk is tough.
Quadruple Boulevard, yes. So a couple.
Generating
Yeah, so three streets that we identified as important east-west connectors, 3rd Street, Banyan Boulevard, and Fern. Fern connects all the way from West Banyan Boulevard, will connect all the way West Banyan Boulevard. Have we missed any others? Have you looked at?
I will say, Old Dixie in the afternoon,
Old
walking from the east side of the street, burning. In fact, you can barely walk a dog.
But what I mentioned was that these are identified as important bike paths to create bicycle and walking infrastructure. Dixie Highway for biking, streets that we didn't feel could accommodate safely for biking and north-south.
But I was just talking about.
Yeah.
And, you can't walk your dog.
Applies to the waterfront. If you go there, the plants are dead. There's so many areas that are not well kept.
No, it's very hard for cities to keep things up at a certain level, and that's why having this public-private partnership, third-party maintenance partners can make a lot of sense.
Right, so is that not working?
No, I think I think it's high performing for its budget and for its mission, but it doesn't have as broad a mission in the DBA. It's not part of its purview. You could expand.
Well, you can't expand the purview. You can't expand the areas.
Right.
Without the legislature. Because it's not divided. I looked it up.
Yes.
That's why
Our letter was DDA. I don't know what else. Yeah, I'm the director of the DDA.
So what's the expand your portfolio?
I heard of
How can that be done?
by state.
So
We
you
voted
expand
in.
your area. What do you do with this DDA? Can you do that? Do you have more taxing ability? Do you get money from the city?
We get funded through the property taxes, assessment values of properties, between residential and commercial.
Within the downtown?
Within our DDA district, our boundaries are smaller than what they consider the DMV.
Yeah, I looked it up before we were sitting here because I was thinking about it.
The other thing you can do, what other people have done, is say, okay, we have a DDA that's reasonable, it has geography and everything. You can create a separate legal entity. We have tons of examples of basically staff organizations that run two entities. So you take the expertise and the staff, and you have some economies of scale and management, and you have two missions, two funding streams for two different jobs. Again, you don't have to do that. You can have a separate organization, but you can say, okay, we're going to have a Parks Conservancy. It's also managed by the same people. It's just two different legal organizations, just like a real estate company. Well, not necessarily.
Because the statute defines the DDA.
Correct. But just like a real estate organization with two LLCs for two properties, same thing.
Well, there's two things. One is the area, which can't actually be expanded without legislation. Right? I looked that up too. Bit of a problem. But the purview of what you do, how much, like, is that something you get to decide?
It's based off of our 5-year work plan, and as long as we have an agreement with the city and the CRA of what our project tasks could be or outcomes, then we build that into our plan, and that's how we get some of our funding.
So one of the things about some of the stuff that we were talking
So
about.
some of the landscaping, some of the clean and safe programs, some of our ambassadors.
Some of the opportunities for, shut a couple masters, do your own.
We do that now too. We do a lot of that already. Yeah. It's just about the scale of how much you want that to happen in our specific area.
Transportation.
Transportation, yeah, so we talked about main east-west routes. We talked about how you would access the waterfront. What about accessing Tri-Rail and Brightline? Do you find what mobility improvements could we do? Because you can only cross on Fern.
And then if you go there, you gotta go all the way to Rosemary.
Right, you have to do this.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that road is gonna get built from Fern to the station.
To get to Toronto.
How's that intersection? When you have to cross there, you got a couple of, the railroad crossing to get back to the other road. That's gonna be a tricky crossing.
Well, so have you guys on the circuit?
How does it? Not anymore.
Oh, it's not free anymore? I'm never like on my game enough to actually make it work, so I always go, oh my god, I'm late, and I have to run and drive my car. But it's ideally that would be a great way to be able to get from place to place.
No. What happened was our ridership was, the wait time for ridership was through the roof. It was great, but to allow people to, the cancellations, which was affecting other people, they decided to implement a fee within the core area. So it's less than likely that you have a cancellation. With that said, the ridership has increased, so it's been stabilized. There is a $2 fee that you have to pay in the core area. Yeah. Oh, you can go far, but it's outside. Yeah, it's more than just the downtown core. You can take it anywhere really in some areas.
One route. They used to have two, and now they only have one.
Where's the tri-rail on?
It's off this side. It's not very far from the right. Another opportunity that we've identified is using the FCC right-of-way to connect over to this quadrant and to your Dora, Northwest neighborhood. Already have to cross over. So, the idea is using this.
I like to so outside of the area. One of ours is around here. So those are two different things.
Yes. Well, the idea is to design to allow only pedestrian and emergency and not allow for vehicle. Yes, exactly. On 7. Connect across. And then utilizing the FEC right of way. Yes, it would be a bridge. We need to be in a overpass. Instead of
that was the time.
No, we're not, we don't think a particular bridge will work.
No, but if you are putting emergency vehicles, you have to.
The idea is that, well, we would only allow emergency. Okay, 2 more themes, we only have 5 minutes. One of them is development, and the other one is to talk about open space and resiliency. And we did talk about the waterfront. We again have taken a very preliminary pass conceptually to consider the potential way that Flagler Drive could be realigned to allow more open space on the waterfront. Correct. The idea, again, sounds like the most open group to what we could propose on the waterfront because a lot of it is about landscaping, okay, and as Bernard explained, it is your iconic front face, front door to the community. And the idea is that there could be, one idea is to realign Flagler Drive, right, and allow more open space on the water side.
There was a plan years ago that engineering group did. I don't know if everybody's seen it, I saw it, but it's probably 15, 20 years ago, to do just that. It was to come around this way, come back this way. This is when, it was so long ago, I think the city hall was still there. To come around actually, and instead of curve this way, to curve this way. And create more of the
The waterfront design included that.
was not done because the design included travel lanes, so that was the decision was not to do it at that time.
I'm gonna get screwed by reducing the travel lanes because I drive them. They need to reduce the travel. It's not great for me.
Does everybody understand? Did everybody hear this?
Say that again, Brian.
We need to,
I drive them every
Flagler
day.
Drive, we need to reduce the travel lanes, add more landscaping.
And maintain it.
And maintain, yeah, take care of it.
Take care of it, maintain it.
I love the idea of opening up more space for the water too.
Right. And what about the idea of opening up more open space on the water?
I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, they do.
So,
They're one way.
yeah, well, that's the other question I had was about the one-way streets. Like, is it, from a planning perspective, from a real place, how does that affect things when you have Dixie and Olive as one-way streets? I mean, these being one-way makes more sense because they're so narrow. But does that change the way people live?
Typically, yes. It's usually not a good idea to do it.
Not a good idea.
Usually not.
One-way street.
Because it's about getting people through, not getting people to, right?
Exactly.
Again, I'm screwing myself, but I actually want this to work, so.
But the other thing is that it also, because it creates more churn, it also creates more churn. And it's, like, you might think you're going faster, but you might actually be going slower. You just don't perceive it the same way. You're losing the time at the light and in the turn, as opposed to going a little bit slower. But the journey time might be similar, depending on the distance.
2 more minutes. Can we talk about
I just want to
More.
one of the ideas we have, part of doing that is that you have a little bit more space there, but the other idea is that we want to break down the distance between the waterfront and Clematis so that people feel more connected to Clematis and the waterfront
So having
once they're
equal
there,
space on
and bring more activity to that section. And if there's more activity here, but there's no more activity
You're
here.
bringing people closer to where we have activity by moving the road here.
Yeah, you're shifting the space that they would be in.
It's too big. And if you want to keep it open for functions, then you landscape this edge of the park and you create a very nice green landscape.
This is underutilized too. I mean, I take my dog there all the time, but it's just it's a big grass field. Yeah.
We're trying to integrate it.
Strip park.
And that's what I'm talking about. But there's, okay, guys, I need 2 minutes to discuss very quickly development in this one.
That's what I think. Come on, Grace, give it to me.
Yes, I've seen it.
Very, very low.
You know what you like, and 9 times out of 10, you know what I like.
Anyone else in development?
Our trust park. Our trust park. I heard Jeff.
Yes.
Dixie Highway right here. There is massive two developments. It's called the old tent site.
It's got beautiful shade trees.
And here, it's going
No,
to
it's
be.
pointing to the district.
Okay, it's going to be 20 stories, and I think it's a 2,000 car parking.
10 cities? That's what the street
Yeah, oh, a tent lot, you know what I'm talking about? There's a massive development between Lakeview
We're done.
between Lakeview
The
and
theater's gone, we're done. This is what it's gonna be.
Dixie to right here becomes one lane. One Dixie between Lakeview and becomes one lane. So it's gonna be a massive.
And there's
Other planners that
10 city development?
and then across the street is
How many units?
condo. No, it's a office building, 20 plus stories. I don't know the name. It's massive. It just broke ground.
I just said the skyline.
Mr. C, correct? Mr. C.
Mr. C is the other development.
Yes, Mr. C is a condo hotel, 20 plus stories. Across the street, it's a massive commercial, 20 plus story, Cohen Brothers development. One
Big problem with that one-way road. One lane. Who wants to report out from this very large?
Jack Weir.
Jack.
You don't know what I do for a living. No one wants to hear from me about development and how to do this.
Do you want to do it? Yeah, I think okay. Would you like to? Yes. We have a very shy person here.
I'm a lawyer. No one likes to hear from lawyers. So is he. Scott, do you want to talk about how we need more right on the moment treaties?
I'll let you guys do it.
I think you're.
I'll tag team with you, Jack. I don't know that I could actually do it all because I did step away.
Okay, just a reminder, we talked about climatics, we talked about east-west connections, right? We talked about the waterfront, and we talked about development, right? So, do a refresh reminder about what we said about climatics. Yes. Remember? I can read.
I think Ray should do it.
More flexible regulation.
Status, character, landscaping, vacant lot, vacant businesses, population, maybe not activate the alleyways, right? That's what we heard. Right. And how you can attract spending. You want me to do it? Okay. I can't because I'm in a mind.
You can mention that I'm saying it's for me and it's okay.
Okay, everybody. We want to make sure that you go home, not exactly at 7, but bear with us for a few minutes. We would like each of the tables to identify someone, as I mentioned earlier, to report back to the group. I understand we have a lot of shy people at every table, but if we can start with table number 1. Who would like to report? Here we go. Yes, sir. Okay, again, table number 1 covers the Northwest District, the Quadrille Business District, and the transit-oriented development.
Thank you. So we looked at, in quadrant number 1, a couple of things we talked about was, is there a potential for a grade level crossing at 7th Street across the FEC tracks? Another one is the existing Cemex plant on the west side of the Cemex tracks that's currently, causing problems. Well, not problems, but it's dusty, it's noisy, it's all that. Does it really belong there eventually? Should it be relocated somewhere? We talked about what ultimately will happen with the residential nature of that neighborhood. You know, Rick Rose mentioned that this reminded him of Grandview Heights 35 years ago, 30 years ago, back when West Palm Beach was known as Crack City, USA. There was Grandview Heights, there was Flamingo Park, there was Northwood. Right now, this neighborhood has a lot of good bones, it has a lot of good character. Is it going to become a series of mid-rise workforce housing developments, or does it make sense to have it restored? A lot more green space, parks, linear parks could be needed, maybe the one along between 2nd Street and Banyan. We talked about the potential impacts of Nora right across the street, but then also the existing connectivity of Sapodilla down to Clematis, Banyan, you know, the downtown area, to make it easy for like maybe slow-moving trolleys, traffic, something like that as a direct connection to the downtown to spur. And how do you seed a redevelopment in that neighborhood? You know, who starts with something and then see if that acorn can turn into an oak tree, kind of a thing. So I think that's a lot of what we talked about, right?
And the last one was Tamarind. It's good to have commercial uses along Tamarind so that you can connect to the development
Right.
and land.
So yes, and again, okay, so if you didn't hear that, the commercial uses along Tamarind, also revitalizing those and help with the economic development in the neighborhood. So then the other question is there a strong neighborhood association there? You know, what's the ownership structure? What's the willingness of the existing stakeholders to see, you know, which direction do they want to go in as far as the future of the neighborhood? Vanderbilt, the other investments going in that part of downtown are going to be a huge opportunity for, you know, investment in the area.
Very good. Thank you so much. Okay. Moving on to quadrant number 2, it includes Brelsford Park, Nora, Providencia Park, and Lofton districts.
Thank you for that. That's a tough one to follow up. The big thing, high-level stuff that we talked about in this district was the connectivity between Nora going west over, as they mentioned, over the tracks at 7th Street. The future plan of connecting Brightline to Nora, however that is going through who's at the town of Palm Beach. Once that's figured out, more residential density. You know, the comparison, do we do more density on the west or more density on the east? More multifamily in the across the rail. The lack of retail space, mainly supermarket, in this quadrant. And what else did we discuss? Yes, the Palm Beach owning the land at Quadro and Nora, where that is. More green space, I think, is a theme that you're going to hear all throughout this. And more the cleanup along Dixie Highway, going up to Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard and the bridge at Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard, not being pedestrian friendly, but the redevelopment of that eventually becoming pedestrian friendly, and yeah, making it cohesive with downtown. And a big thing is the amount of land that the hospital owns on up that way, and a lot of it is not activated. They can be a major player on what happens in this part of the city.
Thank you so much. So table 3 and 4 have hard acts to follow.
But we got Jack.
I had a very shy table, so I'm going to turn it over here
to this gentleman.
Thank you, Grace. I'm going to call on some help from my posse here.
So the first thing we talked about was clematis. This was a little bit diffuse, but clematis, the main challenge we thought was trying to bolster the businesses there. One of the items that was raised was less use of the underground alley or underutilization of the back alleys behind clematis, which leads to things like food deliveries, garbage pickups being on clematis, hurting businesses there. The other thing we talked about was relation to clematis was transportation. The circuit now is, there's a charge because it was oversubscribed and then people were canceling, which was causing backups. So the emphasis was on trying to bolster the businesses on clematis, recognizing that the nature of the businesses there are different than what you have at City Place, more restaurant, club, less shopping, etc. The discussion inevitably gravitated to the waterfront. We weren't exhausted from before. So one of the things that was talked about was reducing the traffic on Flagler, and in the area where Flagler juts out into Lake Worth, basically trying to cut across the park and have more space on the waterfront side, more green space. The other thing that was talked about was utilizing that park better, more trees. There was a suggestion of a dog park, but basically turning it into more active space. Some of the stuff that Bernard talked about in his presentation earlier. So that was seen as one of the things to do there. In terms of community development, we talked briefly at the end about the Quadrille Garden District. In this section of the city, this is the best opportunity for residential, higher density residential. There's currently a height limit of 10 stories. When you go a little bit further west, you go up much higher. There's I think the old Park Lane at the Bright Light Station is like 23 stories. So the thought was maybe to raise that 14 or 15 and enable more. There are a fair number of properties that have been there for a long time that are very low density. You know, there's that Goodyear tire, there's some offices. There's a parking lot that's got a bank teller machine on it that's, you know, half an acre. So, so I think we can probably do better in terms of utilizing things there as well. So, anything I missed, group?
East-West connection?
Oh, east-west connection, yes. There was a suggestion. It's envisioned that Fern will eventually have a crossing across the railroad tracks and go to Australian. And one of the suggestions that was made was turning at the waterfront places like Banyan, Fern, into little nodes of activity as well. There's a park just to the north of Fern that's considered underutilized, and maybe something could be done there as well. Okay.
Well done. Okay, table number 4 includes this particular district. Sorry, I can't memorize your 20 plus. This includes, as you know,
I want to know if you could say his last name.
Clear Lake, Cultural Arts District, and City Place. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just go over here because I'm a graphic guy. Got to point to the map and orient everybody. Thanks for this opportunity. Our groups talked about many things. We started talking about first impressions and how, as you approach the downtown from this area here, you have a unique first impression of the city, almost an opportunity for a gateway. This intersection, as you might know, is problematic in a sense. It's got safety concerns. There's a crosswalk with a flashing light. There's weird sight lines. I live in Grandview Heights, so I see it every day. If you know it, it's a weird intersection. And so if there could be an opportunity, perhaps as a project or a first impression for the downtown, this might be an opportunity to do it that would solve all those safety problems as well. Further, we moved on to, I think, what we spent most of the time on, which is the disconnection that Okeechobee Boulevard creates between the Convention Center and Grandview on the south and City Place and downtown on the north. Lots of different options to talk about, but I think the long and the short of it is if that experience can be changed and if that can be solved from the current status of really fearing from your life and running as fast as you can from one end to the other when you get the signal, to create a more peaceful, welcoming, lush landscape environment and experience that becomes a calling card for the city, that this is how we treat crosswalks. This is how we treat pedestrian connections. And again, we're not going to solve the design solution tonight, right? But if we can solve that problem, lots of the connectivity problems get solved as well. So that's a part that we talked about as well. We also talked about the connectivity of the workforce and how do you get folks from the western communities down into downtown. We talked about some options. Maybe there's a dedicated lane. Maybe the county can do something with that. We also talked about programming elements, I think to Jerome's point, where maybe there's this outside stimulus that I gave the example of the Dutch shuttle, if you're familiar with that. It's a fancy limousine that's got batwing doors in Holland, and it's this really interesting vehicle. It's used for mass transit. Perhaps there could be a program like that where a similar space-age vehicle, electric powered, goes to the western communities and comes to downtown, and it becomes a vehicle that you just stop, take pictures of, or becomes a programming exciting element that helps with that transportation problem. That could end up going to the parking center if that can be resolved with the county as well. So we also talked about the opportunity to utilize the lakefront waterfront over here on the very western side with pedestrian amenities, bicycles, etc. And we also talked about Sapodilla as a potential north-south spine for bicycle circulation.
Thank you so much. Great feedback. We really appreciate you staying with us for 10 minutes past our allocated time. We have the input from this session will be published in the city's website, as well as all the previous presentations you can find through, again, going to the city's website. You will look for and find the Downtown Master Plan Update link with all the information that we've been sharing since we started this process back in February. Anyway, thank you very much and have a good evening. Thank you.